Now, this is probably the biggest one, and I left this one to last for a reason. And the reason why it's definitely in the news cycle currently, and boys, you might have heard this one before, but the origin eligibility debate. So, in recent discussions on the Six Tackles of Gust podcast, Phil Gould, prominent figure in the state of origin history, advocated for revision for the current eligibility rules to better align with the evolving landscape of International Rugby League, according to Nine.com. So, the current eligibility rules are Tier 1 nations. So, players representing Tier 1 countries, which are Australia, New Zealand, and England, are ineligible for state of origin selection unless they have previously played for New South Wales or Queensland, according to the Daily Telegraph. Tier 2 nations, so players can participate in state of origin while representing Tier 2 nations, e.g., Samoa and Tonga, if they meet the residency criteria, such as residing in New South Wales or Queensland before their 13th birthday. Gus Gould's perspective was Gould emphasised the need for the game's regulations to reflect its international growth and the increasing prominence of Pacific nations in rugby league. He proposed that players who meet the state of origin residency criteria should be eligible to play regardless of their tier status of the country they choose to represent internationally. The distinction between Tier 1 and Tier 2 nations should be reconsidered, allowing players the freedom to represent their heritage nations without compromising their state of origin eligibility. This discussion gains relevance in light of recent developments, such as the Payne Haas contemplating a switch to represent Samoa internationally, according to the Daily Telegraph. What do we think, boys? To digest and unpack here.
Yeah, this is a huge one. I have heard of all this talk, obviously, about the changing up the eligibility rules and all that jazz. No idea where I stand. I have so many different thoughts that race through my head with it, and as soon as you start to play with it in a big way and lock it in, obviously, it's going to change the state of origin side of things dramatically. There's a lot of pros, there's a lot of cons. Yeah, I'm really torn. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong here, to be honest. Payne Haas obviously has ties to Australia and Samoa. So, and you can't blame him for wanting to represent Samoa for sure, like if that's his heritage, and that's where his parents are from or whatnot. So I'm not up to date with all that. But at this, like, you can totally understand that, and it would be a shame that New South Wales lose probably the greatest forward going around, full stop at the moment. And then yeah, they're depleting their roster a little
Same
bit.
with Queensland, mate. Tino could go to Samoa as well.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's kind of the fun of it as well. It opens up the door then for a new player to come in. But then are we degrading what we're getting out of State of Origin? Because for me, and I don't know about you two, State of Origin I think is hands down the best part of the game.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it is huge. I love it to bits, and yeah, I really struggle with it. I don't know what the right answer is. Yeah, I'd have to give it a lot of thought. Happy to give you some commentary on the side, kind of thing, and or future episodes we can revert back to it. But yeah, I don't know the right answer. I don't know if you kind of go if you can play for New South Wales or Queensland if you were born in the state. I don't know if that's maybe like a suitable option. And obviously, if you go, what if you moved here at a young age and you play your first juniors and all that type
Well,
of stuff, which
before 30.
yeah, they currently roll off. But there's obviously been a lot of controversy in the past as well. Like GI is one that comes to mind where I hear a lot of Blues fans say he's a Welshman. He should have been on our team, and Queensland got in his ear, and he decided to pick Queensland. And I don't know the eligibility rules there again, and yeah, it gets really tough. But at the end of the day, GI chose Queensland.
Yeah.
But a lot of like Payne Haas and let's say Tino and whatnot, they you hear the story that they pick Australia and they pick Queensland, they pick New South Wales because they offer them more money than like Samoa would offer them. So that takes away from the game and the credibility a little bit there. So I feel like if the whole game as a whole said, the NRL just said, if you make it to any state or national representative level, you get a small bonus, whether it's a $2,000 added for the whole game. So and that would change everything up. But I think if you do pick Samoa, let's say you've moved away from Australia for that year, and it's like, oh, I can't get picked for Queensland or New South Wales, maybe. But it's like, are you allowed to go back? So it opens up so many conversations for it. Yeah, I could talk about it for 24 hours, mate. There's a lot to discuss on it, and there's so many different opinions, and it's a very, 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 very tough one in my opinion.
Very insightful. I think the chopping and changing was one of the biggest things I took away from that. Definitely don't like the idea of chopping and changing between what's convenient. Like, oh, the second row positions look pretty stacked this year. I'm probably going to be better off going to Tonga instead of playing for Australia. Definitely not chopping and changing. Gaz, what's your thoughts before I rip in?
Yeah. So I think it's important to have these like foundation kind of eligibility criteria and things like that because then it's like if I'm always thinking about like across the border. So it's probably for like people around the border where they're born in northern New South Wales or on the Gold Coast, like southern Queensland, and it's like then it's like, oh, well, do I want to represent like the Seagulls just across the border, or do I want to play for the Burleigh Bears? Because then, exactly, it's like from the early age, like grassroots type of thing, like under 12, for example, you'd be making decisions on all that because then, at 13, or was it under 13? Yeah. So then, like, that would then have flow on effect there. But I think it's great to have kind of like rules around it, and things like that, because then, yeah, then you're kind of being able to, choose a team.
Yeah, I think it's just so hard. Like, I personally put Origin and International completely different. They're they're not one to one anymore in my eyes. I think Origin, if you want to play for Queensland, you want to play for New South Wales, that's sick. But if you also want to play for Samoa or Tonga, or you want to play for New Zealand, you want to play for England, go for it. Like Victor Radley, for example, did you boys know he was actually born in Australia?
Mm.
Yep. So he's born in Australia, but since he's playing for a Tier 1 nation in England, he cannot play for Origin, which is stupid because you got some of these Islander boys who were not born in Australia, but they play for a Tier 2 nation, are eligible. He's been in Australia for longer. He's been ingrained into Australian culture for a lot longer. And if that's the argument of, well, we want true Australians being in Origin, well, where's that work at then? Like, you got guys like that who are getting disadvantaged. Ronnie Mulatalo a couple of years ago when we were decimated with outside backs, Mulatalo was a hot shot beginning in for Origin. He played for the bloody under 20 Queensland team. And then the eligibility rule pipped him. Couldn't play in the first grade level. What's the logic there? That's bloody stupid in my eyes. If you have the passion and you want to play for Queensland, New South Wales before your 13th birthday, keep that rule. That makes sense to me. But it doesn't matter if you're a tier 1 or a tier 2. So if you're Victor Radley and you're born in New South Wales and you play for a tier 1 nation in England because you want to represent your family for England, go for it. But that means you cannot play for Australia ever in your life, but you can play for New South Wales. Yes, you have dual residency because you're England, you're Australia, but you cannot play for like Australia. But Origin
Yeah.
is different to international. Doesn't matter what internationality you are, but before you ever want to play international football, you must declare what nation you want to play for, and you cannot chop and change. But you still can play Origin. That is my point.
But that's a whole new discussion because let's say I don't know an exact player example, but let's say my mum's Australian and my dad's English or whatnot, and I'm a footy player, and during my career, I'm lucky enough, like in my earlier days, I'm not, let's say, good enough to be picked for Australia, but England comes knocking on my door and says, "Mate, we'd love to have you," and I get to represent my dad's heritage. And then further in my career, 5 years down, I've turned into an absolute weapon.
Mm.
Uh, and then Australia comes knocking, and then I get to obviously support my mum's side. Like you would see that at home as well, and so you can also relate to that point. So it gets. I wish it was that
It's
straightforward.
definitely not black and white, that's for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, and there's a lot of smarter people, I feel, and there's a lot of people who know a lot more about it all. That I hope they make the right decisions on it, because even at the moment, it does feel a bit. chop and changey a little bit. But yeah, I don't know, because I think even Kalen Ponga's another example.
Yep.
He's only played for Australia and Queensland, and they say if he had the opportunity to play for the Kiwis, he'd most likely change
Yep.
to the Kiwis and play for Queensland.
Moldy All Stars this
So
year.
yeah, there's numerous examples. It's so tough, and then it goes back like, yeah, how do you decide how you want to go with it moving forward, and then hopefully they just take a lot of time with it, have a solid think about it, and try and get it as perfect as possible moving forward. Whatever if they do decide to make changes.
I think the biggest thing is like you want passion in the jersey, and if you're passionate to play for Queensland and New South Wales, that shouldn't. Well, I'm contradicting myself here, but I'm starting to agree with you now, Jake. So I reside what I said earlier. But if you've got passion for the jersey for Queensland and New South Wales, should be able to play regardless of your nationality. And if you have one parent's who's Australian, the other one's from Tonga, you should be able to choose both depending on where you are in your life. Later on in your career, like you might want to play for Tonga, or later in your career, you might want to play for Tonga. It doesn't necessarily matter.
If I was born in New South Wales, lived there till I was 12, moved to Queensland when I was 13, mum's from Sydney, dad's from Brisbane. One goes for Queensland, one goes for Blues. Exact same scenario. And I know that's why the eligibility rules is there. And with Origin, it's probably a bit more clear cut. It's like you make that decision. But same thing, you could have the exact same thing at home. Mum's going for the Blues, dad's going for the Maroons. And then all of a sudden, you don't get your door. Like, you don't get that opportunity 1 year with one team, and the other team wants you because they're hurting in the outside backs or whatever's going on. It's like, oh, I'd also love to represent like the second part of my childhood growing up from 13 to 18 in Queensland instead of the 1 to 12 I spent in New South Wales.
Yeah.
You could twist it so many different ways. So yeah, it's very but yeah, I don't know the right answer. I'll keep throwing that out there. So
all right, Gaz, final thoughts?
Not much more to add.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, we'll probably revisit this in a couple of months or so, or closer to Origin time. But yes, definitely a hot topic. And yeah, my opinion changed twice after talking to you both. So yeah, guys, chuck your opinions down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you guys. Let us know what your thoughts are on the eligibility rules for international and state of origin. Should they stay the same? Should they the tier nations not matter anymore? You let us know. Give us your thoughts, and we might share some of your thoughts next week on the potty. So